Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. I think I'm recording episode 118. No, excuse me, 218 today, something like that. This is your host, Tony Cañas, and today I have with me Jeff Brunken, who I'm assuming I pronounced your last name correctly. I always forget to ask. Perfect. Who is president of the MGIS Companies out in Salt Lake City. Jeff, thank you for joining today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Did I lose you? Okay, perfect.
I'm here.
Are you doing well today?
Yeah, no, things are great.
I always give the guest a chance to kind of give the elevator speech on what your company does.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we're a little bit of an under the radar company, but we do business with brokers in all 50 states. What we do is we build and manage disability insurance products for healthcare professionals, and it's a little bit of an in-between product. You got employee benefits, you've got property and casualty. Disability tends to be right in the middle. We do business with quite a few folks on both sides of the industry. Healthcare professionals are different. They're specialized. If you or I become disabled, our definition of working is our just ability to go to work, any occupation. But a doctor, their definition of work is their specialty. They've built their practice around it. They've done all that. So we build very specialized products that tie back to their billing codes and the specifics of their practice and so forth. And it's very interesting because with all the change in healthcare these days, employment settings, going from private practice to hospital, integrated systems, and so forth, that impacts us and what we do with the product. So it keeps us very busy. Tweaking the product, adjusting, working with the different situations, working with brokers who come to us and the carriers we underwrite for with their particular situations and so forth. It's but it's a good time because it's interesting. During this COVID year, what we're finding is the market is actually very focusing on coverages like disability insurance, and they understand, especially healthcare professionals, they understand how important it is to be covered. So it's actually been a very good year for us, which surprises us. But that's what we do. We, as I mentioned, we're active in all 50 states. We've been doing this for just over 50 years now, and we keep adjusting the model, but essentially our core business is very much what it was when my father started it back in 1969.
Excellent. So a healthcare professional disability. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I come from a family of doctors. I'm the black sheep of the family, the only one that didn't go into medicine. My mom was the first one. She's a lung specialist, and then she was followed by one of her sisters who became a pediatric surgeon. And then both of them told my generation, don't go into medicine. Like it swallows your life. You have to be a lifelong student, and the money's good, but it's a lifestyle, not just a career. And out of my entire generation, I'm the only one that listened. So my oldest cousin is an orthopedician. Her sister is a pediatrician, and the third sister is the only one that got a little bit away, and she's a dentist, endodontist. Then another cousin is she finished her general doctor's degree and is trying to go into emergency medicine. She's going through the application process for the residency. And my sister, being the youngest in the generation, who's 16 years younger than me, just started med school about a month ago. And she's going to Masaryk University in the Czech Republic, getting her degree out there. So yeah, I'm literally the only one that didn't follow in those footsteps. So I totally go ahead.
The good news is if you get sick, you're going to have plenty of help.
Yeah, exactly. It's never been a problem. None of them practice in the U.S. But still, it is very helpful to have them always at a phone call. I completely like see now insurance nerd Tony thinking my family, and yeah, it right. The insurance nerd in me knows that they're much more likely to become disabled than to die.
Oh yeah.
And luckily they don't have student loans because they're in Costa Rica, where I'm from, and they were able to study for free there, and my sister's studying in Europe very cheaply. But here in the States, when you're talking about people who might owe 300, 400, 600 grand in student loans, and are making 3, 4, 500 grand in salary, that is a big insurance pride. That I've never been an agent. I'm assuming that it is hard to find disability for incomes at those levels.
Yeah, well, so yeah, you're right. I mean, your high earning physicians typically will have to have different types of products. So typically you'll have an individual product that somebody will buy when they're younger, and they get to keep it for 20 years or whatever. And then most of what we do is on the group side. So you go to work for a clinic or a hospital, and they'll buy the coverage for all of their employees. So that you've got the individual, and that group comes in, and then you've got high limit disability. We do all of it. We do the individuals who want a permanent product. We do the groups, and then we have we work with Lloyd's of London for certain high earning physicians who basically you pick a number and you just price it and so forth. But it's yeah, I mean it's it's interesting you should say that, because when healthcare professionals come out of school here in the U.S., they're exposed to disability insurance. That's part of financial planning. They all know about it. They're aware of it. They know that statistically they need disability coverage. I mean, their specialized income is their most valuable asset. They've invested all this schooling and time, and they need to protect it. The problem, I mean, it's a very kind of fragmented marketplace out there. So the biggest challenge, frankly, most of the healthcare professionals have is, where do I get enough of it? Because you buy a policy when you're young, coming out of school, you're not making any money, I mean, and then you increase it, and pretty soon you've maxed it out, but you're not covering enough of, you can't get enough to replace like 70% of your income, or whatever your financial planner recommends. So the trick is finding the right broker who really actually understands that it's a specialized kind of thing. How to cobble together the individual, the group, and the high limit. And what we do is, for example, when we build the different products, whether it be the individual product that the individual owns, or the group that the employer purchases on behalf of the employees, or the Lloyd's, we make sure that they're consistent. Like, you've got the same definitions and so forth. And we like to actually have the same people handling the claims, so that there are no surprises, because all that doctor wants is they just want coverage. And if they've got to cobble together different policies, that's okay, as long as they work the same. So that's a big part of what goes on out there is, working with brokers who are working with their, it's very specialized, training them, helping them to understand it, and just managing exceptions that come up, trying to help people have a good outcome, and all that. So, yep.
Do you work mostly with a small set of specialty brokers that do a lot of this stuff, or do you work with a very large set of agencies that don't see a lot of it, just see one every once in a while?
It's all of the above. And we literally work with thousands of producers. But what's going on in the industry, as you know, I mean, with all the merger and acquisition activity, these small specialty brokers are going away, and they're joining the bigger, the national firms. And so that's another twist to this whole thing is, I mean, as those clients, those books of business migrate from, through the sale to a larger organization, there might be different teams involved. There might be, they might be moving that into some sort of a vertical for disability insurance within that broker firm, or whatever, executive benefits, whatever you want to call it. Then we're working with different people, and we're having to, for example, if a sale happens midterm in a policy, it comes up for renewal. Our products are expensive, right? And so that broker at renewal, they're looking at this expensive product, and so we need to make sure that they understand why the client bought that. What's the difference here? And it's actually pretty important too, because you wouldn't want your brother or your sister who are, doctors to have the wrong policy and not have the right kind of coverage. And so we're spending quite a bit of time, throughout all this transition. So the short answer is we work with all of the above, property and casualty firms that have employee benefit teams, the opposite, employee benefit firms who do, but more and more, it's the big national, either national, regional type firms that have dedicated teams. And some of the people kind of go with those transactions. Sometimes they don't, but either way, you're just spending a lot of time educating and training. I mean, what we do doesn't really, we're considered an ancillary benefit, right? So it's important. It actually is really, really important to the doctors. But say, for example, they're working in a large practice setting or a hospital. Well, I mean, even though the disability protection really is important to the individual physicians and could really affect their life positively or negatively, the people making those decisions they're more worried about the health plan, or that's where the real money is, or the the property, the bigger the professional liability, and so forth. And so another challenge we face, frankly, is getting enough shelf time, to make sure that we've got enough time to make sure the client, the broker, everybody involved, that they understand this coverage before they just run out of time and they go for the lowest cost, because we're rarely the lowest cost. And so it's all about selling the value, helping people understand, the contract and so forth and all that. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting time. I mean, you've got so much M&A activity that it's hard to even think of anybody that was around 10 years ago that hasn't sold or moved, or, a lot of movement.
It's hard to even keep up. Like I feel bad. I used to be a sales manager for carriers, and I like, there's so much money in the broker space that it's gonna be a hard job today, where like a third of your territory buys each other every year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, tons and tons of money in the agent and broker space.
Yeah, the old way of keeping track of people with business cards. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, LinkedIn, thank heaven for LinkedIn. I mean, you can at least find somebody now. With the old business cards, forget it.
Absolutely. And so you've got 31 years at MGIS, which was founded by your dad. I'm curious on, is there an origin story? Is there how did your dad come up with the idea of creating the company? Was he already in that side of insurance?
No, so my father, when he started out, he was working for a small insurance agency in Eugene, Oregon. And what he began to see, I mean, he had a couple of clients that were doctor groups and so forth. And what he started seeing was a trend. This was back in the 60s, or, he didn't start this company until 69. So 50s and 60s, where it was predominantly solo practice here, is, Marcus Welby, that's where our country was. And then you had a few of the large clinics, Mayo, Geisinger, some of these, Cleveland Clinic, those all started out as, like 20, 30, 40, 50 doctors, practicing in a group. And frankly, we worked with all those groups from the very beginning when they were just these like small partnerships. Well, nobody really had a product for groups. And his premise was, he was really the one who, if anybody can take credit for group long-term disability for physicians, it's him. He was the one. His whole premise was, listen, a physician practice, and that's still the premise we follow essentially today. A physician practice is like any other small business, or with business with partners. You've got, say for example, you got 10 physicians in a practice. It's just like 10 accountants or 10 attorneys. They're all basically, producing revenue. And so if one of those physicians becomes disabled, at some point, the other 9 physicians are going to be, pushing them to get back to work. When they're ready. There's sort of a built-in incentive to get back to work. And so back then there was really no product design for this. It was all just individual stuff. And so he worked with, I don't even know the name of the company, Slippery Rock, Mutual Insurance Company of Maine or something. I don't know. That's and they put together a product, and it went through different companies. And today we underwrite on behalf of Sun Life nationwide. But, it was Hartford, and before that it was, Connecticut. We've gone through different companies. But, so essentially the main premise we follow today is that if you've got healthy physicians, physicians working for a profitable practice, making, a good living, they're happy. They're not going to be going out on disability. And so we can price our product. Our products tend to be more feature rich than most of our competition, and we price it accordingly. And it's a profitable, very stable program we have. It's the oldest block of its type in the whole country, and that's because we spend quite a bit of time. We don't write just anybody. We really try to focus on, okay, let's learn about this clinic. Is this a stable business? Or are they up and down? If it's a stable business, the people working there, they're going to be happy, motivated, and so forth and so on. We don't see very many physicians in our, and we've got thousands and thousands of physicians. We don't see very many physicians in our block that are, malingers, who are trying to use disability insurance as, kind of a way to get it. You hear stories. We just don't see it. It happens, but it's a very healthy block, focusing on the group stuff. And even with, like, for example, our Lloyd's of London, where we come in and we'll write an individual out of that group, with the higher, policy on top of it. We really only focus on those individuals who are part of a group, a healthy group that is financially well run, stable. The doctors are highly motivated. Most of them are very high achievers, and they love what they do, even though it is difficult. But generally, we see the other side of medicine where, doctors are highly motivated to keep doing what they're doing, and they're not looking for ways to get out of it at all. So
I would think that getting into medicine, like getting to a point where you have your MD or even more your specialty, it's not something you can fake, right? It's a calling, and it wasn't easy to get there. And once you get there, you want to do it, right? Otherwise you would not have so you can put up with 4 years in an undergrad program you don't like, but 8 or 15 uh, for all the way through your specialty.
Get through that intern and residency and everything. There's no way to outlast it and just gut it out if you don't really connect with it. If you don't feel like you're motivated, you feel like you're doing the right thing. I mean, that's we're just generalizing, and there are always going to be exceptions and so forth, but that's what we see. I mean, we see, and again, if just judging from the health of our insurance block or client block, I mean, it's a very stable and growing field. It's also interesting. We always hear about the negative stuff, the headlines and so forth. But the other half of it is we have a physician shortage now. I mean, they estimate that we're 50,000 physicians short, and that shortage is expected to expand to almost 200,000 over the next by 2030. So it's actually a really good time to be a healthcare professional if you think about it. And they're in a great position to negotiate. In fact, we preach that a lot. I mean, we want our brokers to remind doctors that, hey, and the clients, the group practices, if you have the best benefits, compensation is a great way to retain people, but benefits are really, a pretty powerful way too. And so that's a big deal. A hospital administrator, same thing. I mean, in the past, it's always been, cost cutting, CFOs and so forth. But I mean, there's a lot of M&A going on in the healthcare business. So these hospitals are buying physician practices. Well, it's a bad outcome if they buy the practice and they can't keep the docs, because that's the patients follow the doctors.
That's what you're buying. Yeah.
Exactly.
The building, the nice building is you significantly overpaid. That's what you get out of the transaction for sure.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And I was looking at your LinkedIn, and we were chatting a little bit before we started recording, and so you started. You had a little bit of, you had some insurance career before joining your dad's company.
Yep.
So you were an underwriter for what was at the time St. Paul's, right?
Yep.
So not what is now, which was later acquired by Travelers. So you were a MedMal underwriter?
Yeah, so I worked for St. Paul Insurance Company. Back then, St. Paul was the number one writer nationally of medical malpractice insurance. And the way they organized St. Paul, they had a division called, what was it called? Medical, can't even remember now. We focused on the healthcare business. And it was really interesting at that time to be an underwriter with St. Paul, because say, for example, if you had a hospital, we focused on it as an industry, but we would underwrite every coverage for those risks. So, for example, hospital, we do the property, the building. We would do the hospital professional liability. We would do the commercial auto, because they've got ambulances. We would do the boiler, because you got, work comp, the whole thing. It was fascinating. And we would actually place our own reinsurance. It was before, it was really fun, because this goes back a few years, but it was just fun work, because we worked with the brokers. We had internal teams. We would underwrite it, and then we had teams that could put the forms together and make sure everything was done accurately and all that. And then we would place the reinsurance with these little sheets that we'd fill out. It was facultative. It was a lot of fun, but it was a great company to work for back then in terms of training, learning. I don't do medical malpractice stuff anymore, but I'm telling you, all of that training and education exposure I had to the healthcare business, the business side, how it's structured, and what really helps me today. It's I mean, it's relevant because our entire client base, is a provider of disability insurance. It's healthcare providers. And whether it be a hospital who's purchasing this on behalf of all their employees or carving out the physicians separately, as a separate foundation, you get into the business structures, or whether it's an integrated system, you've got 10, group practices who are working together as some sort of a network. We've created a version of our product that works with that, and so for me personally, it's been really helpful and also gratifying to it's like you want to build on your career. You want to be able to use leverage it step by step as you go through it, and fortunately, I've been able to do that. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I thank you for the description of what it was, the underwriting of MedMal back then. Underwriting is still a great career. It is rare that you get to touch that many things. I was middle market with Liberty, and I got to do everything except for the umbrella, and rarely, a couple times a year, I got to get the facultative. Most other things were covered by our treaty, or were just not big enough to need a reinsurance at a company as large as Liberty. But yeah, that would have been a lot of fun to do, like soup to nuts, the whole thing. What a lot of our listeners and a lot of our readers are, the reason they connected with Insurance Nerds and started to listen to the podcast is because they're trying to grow their insurance career. So they're early on in their insurance career, they're trying to grow. So what advice do you have for a young insurance professional? Like, think really entry level, with somebody sitting in the call center at at State Farm or at Nationwide, doing really entry level claims or service. If they have an interest in the healthcare side and they want to grow into the healthcare side, whether that's MedMal or whether that's medical liability or whatever, what's the path? What should they seek? What should they study? Are there designations? What's the path into your side of the industry?
Yeah, well, there are designations. I think that's more of a kind of an addition to type thing. I do what I did. I mean, I was working, I got out of college and I was working for my dad. My plan was to go get my MBA. So I was doing my 2 years of work, and so forth. And they had a medical malpractice program that they needed somebody to run, and nobody cared about it. So I did that, and I thought, well, I'm not going to learn anything about medical malpractice working for my dad, So I picked up the phone and I called up St. Paul. I mean, quite a few phone calls. They were the biggest. So I interviewed for a job, went to work for them. I figured if I wanted to learn about that business, I needed to go to work for the company that was the best at doing it. So I always advise young people who are starting out, and if they have an interest in a type of coverage or an industry, find out which company is the best, and find out which company does the best in training their folks. I mean, you're not going to learn a lot about this stuff, working for a smaller company that doesn't have the resources to train, and so forth, and the commitment and all that. And so fortunately, one of the best moves I ever made was, leaving my dad's company and going to work for St. Paul. At the time, they were really just a high quality company, and learning a lot about the sector. I mean, I'm telling you, I use stuff every day still that I learned back then. And then get to know people. So along the way, you look for opportunities to network. Just make sure if there are functions, if there are industry functions, whether it be Plus or NAFA, or depending on what your industry focus is, join those things and network and get to know people. You can't just do one or the other. I mean, you got to do both. You've got to work for the company that's going to run you through the structured formal training, so you really like you're tested and you learn things. But then when you're rubbing shoulders, that's the other half of it. You hear what's going on. You get to know people. You find out about opportunities that that you may be interested in. People that you want to work with, or people will reach out to you. And so, and I have spent time getting the designations, but I didn't ever view that as a substitute for any of these other things. I mean, that was just in addition to. You do that on your own time. That's important. Because frankly, I think one thing it demonstrates to other people is you care. You take your career seriously and so forth. But go to work for the right company, a company that can train you, network with the right people. Put some effort into it, invest time in networking, and things will open up. Things will come your way. Yeah.
Fantastic. Somehow, looking at your LinkedIn before we chatted, I missed the fact that you're a CPCU. I hadn't realized that. And you're a CPCU and an RPLU.
Yeah.
So I'm a CPCU fanatic, and a lot of our listenership is pursuing CPCU or has pursued CPCU. So if you got yours in '94, I don't think that was Hawaii. Where was the trip that year?
I don't even remember. In fact, I don't think I even went to the national. I think I was too busy to attend. Like the year you get it, they have the national meeting and stuff. I don't think I went. It was probably someplace great, and I was too busy trying to just pay my rent. But yeah, no, I'm a big believer in education. I really am. I enjoy it.
I agree completely, and our PLU. So I'm guessing that our PLU is a lot more closely related. I don't have my RPLU, but I'm assuming our PLU is a lot more closely related to what what your company does today.
Yeah, well, actually, so our PLU, registered professional liability, and it's very focused on, so I was doing med mal by that point, and so it was very, very much focused on the healthcare professional liability, directors and officers, the various professional liability lines. It was great education too. CPCU is sort of it's a great broad foundation, and I wish I could say that I passed all the tests the first time. It was challenging, right? I mean, but got it done, and after work, after family, and you got to give things up and just do it. But yeah, it's all good.
It's an investment that you will never regret. That's what I've always told people about CPCU. It'll be hard, and it's an investment that you'll never regret.
I agree.
So it's been really interesting to chat with you. Thank you. I feel like I've learned a lot about the disability side, especially when it comes to medical piece. Very, 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 very interesting. So thank you so much for joining me today. Basically, I look forward to see what you guys do going forward, especially with the ever-changing environment of the healthcare side here in the U.S. I think that it'll be you'll continue reinventing the company. Basically, I'm sure of that.
Well, there's nothing about 2020 that's predictable, and no, we've all kind of made it through, and it is sort of it's a crazy time. But no, I mean, I appreciate your having me. It's been fun. It's fun, chatting and comparing notes and all of that, and hopefully I said something that can be useful for somebody.
Oh, you most certainly have. It's I notice it all the time here in the industry. There's a lot of academic creep where we assume that just because we do it every day, everybody knows it, and you forget just right. Most people have a tendency to forget just how much how useful this conversation would have been if you had heard it 15 or 20 or 30 years ago. So yeah, no, I guarantee sometime in the next year, I'm going to get a couple of emails saying, oh my God, I loved the interview with the medical disability guy. Thank you so much. I am now trying to get into that side of the industry. Always happens. So thank you so much for your time. and hopefully at some point we'll have you back for an
Anytime.
update as things have significantly changed.
Good. Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.